Welcome to this week's Thrive Programme podcast. Today I'm joined by Kayane, who is one of our Thrive coaches based in south of London.
Yes.
And really interesting, this topic. So a little while ago, in fact, the first podcast we did, we had Rob Kelly on talking about how you build emotional coping skills. And Kayane's got a real life situation where, having mastered the way that you make yourself feel about things, you dealt with the situation very differently compared to perhaps how you would have done before. So first things first, hello, welcome.
Hello, Lucy. Thanks for having me.
So do you want to start off by telling us a bit about what your story is, and then we can jump into how you tolerated it, how you managed it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so I'm Kayane. I'm one of the Thrive program coaches, and just even if you take a step back, one of the reasons what drew me into the program was before I knew about the Thrive program, I used to struggle with anxiety quite quietly, like we do, and I used to struggle with panic attacks, generally not feeling good, and those are the reasons what drew me to the Thrive program. So I went through the Thrive program with those in mind, with the goal of getting over my anxiety, and it ultimately changed my life so much that I thought, I have found a calling where I can help people who are in a similar situation live better. So that's why I retrained and I became a coach. During my coaching time, half unexpectedly, I found out that I was expecting my second daughter. So I had a little break, but that's why I wanted to join this podcast today, because knowing what I know, being a Thrive program coach, really helped me thrive through a catastrophic situation, catastrophic experience, and quite possibly, if I didn't know how to thrive through, I would have walked away with big trauma and possibly PTSD.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what happened?
So what happened was, when I was 20 weeks pregnant, I was flagged as having higher risk of preeclampsia. And, women who are pregnant or expecting would know what preeclampsia is. It's basically one of the conditions pregnant women can develop that affects your blood pressure. But now, we have systems in place that you can get monitored. So I could feel supported, but there's still that unknown and unpredictability on top of everything else that comes with pregnancy, doesn't it? And unfortunately, when I was 34 weeks pregnant, my preeclampsia became a reality. I developed very high blood pressure, which was dangerously high, to the point I had to be very quickly be put on medication to combat my high blood pressure. I was admitted to hospital, incomplete bed rest. I was advised to not even talk much and move much. That's how serious it became all of a sudden within a couple of days. And during my stay in the hospital, unfortunately, unexpectedly, I started bleeding heavily. Something that I've never experienced before. And these are the situations where knowing how to thrive is really helpful, because there is no rehearsal in these situations. And if you don't have the capacity to cope, which it's great that you guys covered that topic with Rob, then because it is a life and death matter ultimately. And in that moment, when I sat down this morning to reflect upon my experience, to talk about it this morning, I realized that my first thought was, oh shoot. And there was that shock ultimately. And my second thought was, I have to call my husband Simon, because my daughter and him, they were visiting me. I was only allowed one visit a day, which had to be 15-20 minutes only. And my second thought was like, I have to call Simon because I don't want them walking into this situation of there is blood everywhere. It's not something I want my daughter to see this. And my third thought, I am so scared. And I just want my dad here. I just want my dad to be with me because my dad's a surgeon and he can ultimately help me understand the situation a little bit better, because especially when it's a medical emergency, there is that desire to control kicks in. What can I do to introduce control in this situation? And then, I couldn't have my dad with me. He wasn't with me, unfortunately. And upon reflection, even if he was there, I don't think he's the right person to be around me. He's too close, isn't he? But then your human reactions kick in. That overwhelming fear, and I could feel it in my body as well. And something very interesting and incredible happened is the time just stood still. It's very difficult to explain this, but all of a sudden I became hyper aware of everything around me. And I remember looking at one of the midwives and thinking, oh gosh, your glasses really need cleaning. Like there was loads of dust. I wear glasses, so for me it's an interesting thing. But then as soon as I spotted myself feeling that fear, something very powerful kicked into place, because then all my training, all my practice and knowledge and learning came into place. All of a sudden, that's like, I've got things, I've got this, I'm gonna be okay. So I made the conscious choice of I have to shift my emotional state from absolute fear to calm, to the best of my ability. Because that's all I can do right now. I can't control things that are happening around me, because quite naturally you start thinking, like, I wanted my dad to be there. The reason is because I don't know if the surgeon slept well the night before. I don't know how clean that operating theater is. I don't know how experienced those people around me are. So, and all of those are natural things to consider, but if we let those thoughts go unchecked, then what happens is we end up creating that immense fear. Because all we look around us and all we see is there's nothing I can do to control here. Something very big, catastrophic is about to happen and I'm powerless.
Yeah. So how did you do that in that moment? So you had that sort of thought, right, the shit's hit the fan. This is here we are. This is shit. However, I can't control all of these external factors, but what I can do is look after what I'm thinking, my perspective, my attitude, my mindset, those sorts of things. So how did you shift your mind from fear and feeling a bit out of control to, right, come on?
Yeah, we've got work to do. We need to do stuff, because this isn't, and just to reiterate something to everyone listening here, because I don't want anyone to think that one, I'm not made any different, I'm not that special. I'm quite simple, actually, in a nicer term. And also this whole experience wasn't about suppressing emotions. This wasn't about you know what, I'm just going to push fear away. It wasn't about burying an emotion deep down so it can't get to me. It wasn't that. It was all about guiding my emotions consciously. That's what I meant by making that conscious choice. And that comes with practice, because I couldn't control what was happening around me. Like, for all of the reasons I just explained, I can't. But what I could control, what was happening inside me, inside my head, and inside my body. Because as coaches, we know that emotions don't happen to us. They are created in the moment based on our perception, based on the information we're taking in. So when you think about the scenario, if I kept thinking about all the things that I did not know and I could not control, it's no wonder I create immense fear, because unpredictability equals something that you can't control. And all of that is going to drive you further away from a point of feeling powerful in that situation. Because especially in a medical condition like that, I'm not medically trained. I wouldn't know. And honestly, if you're bleeding out, the last thing you want to be doing is creating a lot of fear, because of all the effects it's going to have on your physical body. Your heart's going to beat faster, and it's going to contribute to you bleeding out faster. So it was the best skill set I had in that moment. And again, reiterating the fact that it didn't happen miraculously. I didn't click my fingers and all of a sudden I could do that. There's been continuous and persistent effort in trying to manage my emotions in other little areas of my life, because hopefully not everyone's going to have this type of opportunity to learn about emotional mastery, but it's all about those smaller occasions, sitting in traffic, and if you're more likely to get frustrated and angry, work there, start with the smaller frustrations, start with the smaller instances, because if you prove yourself that you have the capacity, you build a belief system around that. So when you find yourself in a situation where it was as testing as mine, then you feel powerful that you can do that.
Yeah. So since doing the Thrive program yourself, you'd built up that skill
Yes.
set, put yourself in loads of uncomfortable situations, but kept yourself as calm as you could, or at least calm in response to a bit of fear or anxiety you might have initially created. I think
Yep.
sometimes you can have that sort of, you must have had that primary fear in that scary situation, but how you
Exactly.
respond and how you treat that fear is the bit that I guess we're talking about. Because it would be
Precisely.
silly for you to go, well, I was completely calm, 100% calm the whole time. You weren't, right? You
Yeah.
probably were scared and feeling all the feels, but equally knew that at least you could do something to manage how you were responding and your self-talk, and like you said, those beliefs that you had in your ability to manage how you felt was where then you put the effort in that situation.
Exactly, because we're more likely to draw on previous experiences, consciously and unconsciously. So it's all about arming yourself with those positive, empowering experiences that in a moment like that you can draw on from, because emotions are wonderful. I love talking about emotions, and they tell us something. That's why, like, when I work with my clients, when they're consulting me, I've got so much anger I can't control, especially sometimes when mums, and they might have so much on their plate. They are more likely to feel like they're out of control of their emotions. I snap back, and I don't want to be like that. I wanna have a calm relationship with my children. So it's all about understanding, giving a voice to that emotion. So in a sense, they lose their power over you, because you do build up that understanding, that belief that, this is my creation. But what it's telling me, like in that moment, the fear was real and it was appropriate,
Absolutely.
because all I want to do is stay alive. I've got another kid at home. I just
Yeah.
want to be alive. I was quite young,
Yeah.
so I've got so much to do. So fear, the emotion fear I created, was um appropriate. It was the amount of it that was unhelpful.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, isn't it? Because sometimes we create emotions and we believe them. So if
Yeah.
we're in the habit of catastrophizing
Yeah.
about a mole on our arm, or the kids, I don't know, dropping food on the floor or something like that, to believe the emotion in that situation is not necessarily the right thing to do. You want to challenge that emotion. But in that situation, when you're in hospital in a really unpredictable life or death scenario, be like I said, it'd be silly to not think that you would have a whole lot of fear.
Yeah.
But equally, knowing that you could handle that, knowing that you could focus on the things that you could do. So what was your self-talk in that situation then? What was going through your head? How did you keep yourself calm? Because didn't you have some of the medical professionals coming to check on you to check you were okay, because they were like, how is she so calm?
Yes, yeah, that was incredible. And in that moment I really had to, like, because like we do, we believe in what we teach because we know what it can achieve. Ultimately in any normal quote unquote situation, I would have reached out my bag and got my card out. I wasn't able to, but all the medical personnel around me, midwives, I think at least one anesthetist and a surgeon, came to check on me to ensure I wasn't slipping into unconsciousness, because they kept asking me, "Are you aware of the gravity of the situation? Has anyone explained you?" Someone asked me, "Has anyone explained you what's happening right now?" In the nicer, calmer sense. They weren't trying to trick me into panicking, don't get me wrong, but I think there has to be an element of um, understanding. So I have to stay cognizant and
Mm.
conscious. So they kept checking, "Are you okay?" Because it's not normal for a person to be this calm. So, but that's when I told them, I'm right now, I'm just, doing the best I can, letting you guys do what you're professionally armed with, do the best. And then I am trying to do what I can do best, which is triaging all my thoughts and all my emotions. And one phrase I kept, repeating in my mind is, the thought in my mind right now, is it helpful or unhelpful? That sounds so simple, but is incredibly helpful. So anyone who believes they can't control their emotions, please write that down in your hand in front of you, because when you get to learn to do that process really well, that's very powerful. Because let me give you a few examples. So one thought, like I said, in my mind was, I need to see the surgeon. I need to see the surgeon. I mean, what will happen even if I see the surgeon? I'm not a doctor myself. I'm not going to say, you know what, I'm just going to pause my bleeding for 1 second. Let me check your CV. Let me see how many hours of professional experience you have. I'm not going to do anything with that. So in that situation, that thought is unhelpful.
Well,
You
that's
know,
you desiring control, isn't
yeah,
it? That's the guard
yeah,
dog barking, trying to get
exactly,
some element of control over who the hell is doing stuff to me and how qualified. But equally, as you said, that isn't the control, or that's the wrong sort of control to
exactly,
use in that scenario. You've got to
exactly.
accept those things
Yeah,
and actually put the control into your mindset and
exactly.
managing your thinking.
Yeah. And another example of thinking is, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And, again, I'm not medically trained, so I wouldn't know exactly why I was out of breath. But I've got a few options. One, telling people around me, like, I've got a tight chest. And that wasn't unnatural in that moment, because a few days leading up to that event, I could feel very tight chest, especially when my blood pressure was rising. I could feel it. But then in that situation, again, like, you know, thinking, I can't breathe, is not going to be helpful. So what I can do is, all right, let's work on my breathing a little bit. So I remember I do a lot of Pilates, so I know a little bit how to control control my breath. So I was like, right, what can I do to feel a bit calmer now? Is, okay, I can control my breathing.
Mm.
So that's what I mean by triaging your thoughts, is distinguishing which ones are not serving you really, which ones that's not going to bring you anything positive. Because also, I'm not sure if I want to list everything that was being exchanged in that operating theatre, but I was fully conscious, and they
Mm,
were discussing
mm,
options, possible outcomes, within me being earshot. And
mm.
that's not a criticism of anyone there. I'm gonna be forever grateful for everyone that was in that room on that day. I still remember their faces. I'm very bad with names, but I still remember faces. But they were just doing their job. They were just, as medical professionals, exchanging, this is happening, that's happening, should we do this, should we take that action? But again, if you don't know how to triage and push away the unhelpful thoughts, all of that. And we talked about this briefly, didn't we, in our previous chats, is every time I talk about my experience, I feel like I should be amping it up a little bit because of our capacity as coaches to manage our emotions, manage our reactions so incredibly well. Our perception differs from someone else who doesn't know how to thrive. So,
Yeah.
in order to communicate the effect of, I'm sure loads of other women have gone through a similar scenario, but mine wasn't any less quote unquote traumatic.
No, which shows. So you said at the beginning, didn't you, that you potentially could have gone on to create PTSD or struggle as a result of that. So, and you saying there that you have to almost, in order to tell the story, you feel like you almost play it down a bit. Like
Yeah.
you said to me before, can I talk about bleeding heavily? Because, and I was like, that's probably an understatement, isn't it? Because so afterwards, talk us through then. What did you have to do? So in the moment, you're sort of just surviving thought to thought, emotion to emotion, and sort of steering yourself through as best you can. Afterwards is when sometimes when we can create more problems for ourselves because we're in our
Yeah.
head, we're reflecting, we're questioning, we're far more aware of what could have happened. So
Yes.
what did you do in the days, weeks, months afterwards?
That's the thing. That's why kind of like thriving is literally a way of living, because you just never stop, and you were so on point to raise that basically, because thriving through the moment, that's great. I've done that. It's amazing. And maybe we should do another podcast about the fallout of that, because physically I was quite in a bad state, um, as well as not seeing my daughter in the first several hours of her life because I physically could not move. They could not move me. I was in a very delicate moment. Um, but post-event processing is one of the biggest things I think we teach within the Thrive program, because, like you mentioned, so much of what happens around us and what we do in that moment is great, coupled with how we walk away from that experience. How are we going to store that in our memory
Yeah,
so we can use it for the next experience so we are better?
yeah,
So I guess I had a couple of options. One, thinking that was an incredibly bad experience. I'd never want to visit that. I don't want to think. It's too painful. The memory is just too much. So all of those. But again, like, which one of those are helping me? None of those are helping me. And more importantly, I can't help anyone if I'm talking that way. So again, we choose how we process an experience once it's come and gone. So I chose to process it from a powerful and empowering lens that look at what I could achieve.
yeah,
And that is one of the biggest learnings moving forward, because like I said, it's a journey. we'll continue thriving every second for the rest of our life. And thriving
Mm.
is not always, you know, being so happy, so rosy, you know, life's great. No, thriving is all about managing your emotions and your reaction to the things that are happening around you.
Yeah, yeah. So knowing how anyone's mind can work and the different components that are at play, you were able to almost optimize the memory, optimize your
Yeah.
experience in the work that you did post that happening. And I guess in the days, weeks, months, maybe even now, you still look back on it. But like you say, sometimes I think people can um, try and forget that it happened, or put it in a box and sort of put it away somewhere. That's too painful, that's too raw, that was too difficult, which is, it's a coping mechanism, isn't it? It's
It is.
totally understandable. But because you have a great belief in your ability to cope even in a really difficult situation, you probably didn't need to do that. You actually can accept that was really tough, that was really
Yeah,
challenging, that was really scary. I almost died. The baby could have died.
yeah,
Genuinely a really crappy, wouldn't wish it on anyone's situation. But you can accept that, but equally
yeah,
know that, I got through that by my thinking, by my beliefs, by all the work I'd done beforehand, by the way
yeah.
that I navigated it, by the perspective that I took.
Exactly. Practice, practice, practice. That's because that's what ultimately do is better. We build just better, more helpful habits. Because, like you said, when people have difficult situations, difficult experiences, something's hurtful. Like, I'm not thinking, oh, let me get pregnant again so I can go through the whole thing ever again. No, it's not logical. I would like to avoid that, but I can also choose to turn that into something powerful and meaningful in that moment. So if I box it up, if I put it away, yes, that is a coping mechanism. And I guess one could argue that it works, but there are other helpful ways of coping.
Yeah, yeah. It works for sure, and it's sometimes it's the only thing you think you can do, or the easiest way of
Yeah,
doing things. But I think when you've got that knowledge that you can handle stuff, you can accept that it's really crappy. But equally, it's like that Stockdale thinking, isn't it? We often
yeah,
talk about the Stockdale paradox. On the one hand, accepting the brutal reality
yeah,
of the situation whilst knowing you can get through it. And I think what you explained so well there is, had you have focused on all the things that you weren't in control of, the doctor, your breathing, some of these things you might have thought really in a powerless way about, and then created loads of anxiety. But
yeah,
what you did was think powerfully, well, what can I do to control
yeah,
my breathe? I might not be able to get it really calm, but
yeah,
maybe I can do some Pilates type breathing and let me see if I can calm
exactly.
it down a little bit.
And I
So
think I did it well because that's why they kept coming up to me and asking, like, "Are you okay?"
yeah, yeah. But your powerful thinking, right, I can't do any of this. I can't control that. The
Yeah,
surgeon, well, who knows if they slept or not. But what I can do is manage my thinking, keep my breathing as calm as I can, and just
yeah,
focus on so then you felt powerful even in
exactly.
a really difficult
Yes.
situation. That's the key, isn't it?
And the other thing I wanted to mention, because it just occurred to me, is I guess one of the toughest thoughts I worked on was, in what shape or form my baby is going to be born. Is she okay?
Mm,
Because no one can tell me anything in that moment, because they're so focused on saving your life and your baby's life. They can't take time to calm you down. So, and thinking that thought was one of the hardest to manage. But then
yeah,
again, I could rely upon all the other times I could manage another unhelpful thought, help me go through that.
mm,
Because it is a very heavy thought, but then again, is it serving me? There is not much I can do by having that thought.
Yeah, yeah,
Again, turning inward, turning to me, keeping me calm
yeah, yeah,
is the most helpful in that moment.
yeah. And it's that acceptance, isn't it? Accepting that it's an unknown and it's a bloody big thing. It matters, but equally, I can try and get control. I can try and predict. I can try and come up with the answers myself, but it's not based on anything at this stage other than just my imagination. And
Exactly.
therefore, that's not a helpful route to go down because, of course, I'm going to be imagining worst case. And right now, that's not going to help me in this
No,
situation. So that's what
no,
you're saying about actually reining that way of thinking in and making sure you didn't go down that route and actually just went, do you know what? I don't know. And I've
yeah,
just got to tolerate at the moment and suck it up that I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
As hard as that was.
Exactly, but it's possible. That's the whole point of our
Yeah.
podcast today, isn't it? It's just to show everyone that there's a difference between accomplishing something hard, but it's not impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So what would be your key tips or message that you want people to take away? Right, if somebody's listening to this thinking, right, as I think Rob said in episode 1, when I said to him, how important are coping skills, and he said it's the most important thing in life, full stop.
Yeah,
So you've said you worked on it for a couple of years beforehand. What can people do to almost equip themselves with this belief, this skill set, this set of resources, so that should they need in any situation to use it, what can they do?
yeah. So I would say from today, start practicing these things and start with when you feel that there is a big emotion that you're feeling, pause. Have a pause for a few seconds and try to reframe that. Like I said, triage those thoughts that in your mind, triage them and address why am I creating this emotion right now? So if it's fear, what can I do to mitigate that? What can I do to change it, especially if it's an emotion that's not serving you? Because let's be honest, if you are on the street and a car is coming towards you 60 miles an hour, you do want that fear.
Yeah,
You do want that anxiety because
yeah,
that is in the moment is serving you a purpose. So one is that distinguishing, because a person's ability to achieve that simple fact of I can take a pause, I can slow it down, and I can triage, that's the first step to build a powerful belief around it. And like I said, start with the smaller frustrations, smaller instances of the mundane life. Your husband, he's thrown his socks in the corner of the room for the 100th time, despite you telling him last night. Start there. Start with the little,
yeah,
and then build on from that, because you just don't want to throw it. And I guess that's why we never do exposure therapy, because we don't have to, because we're able to teach this formula to our clients, and because they start building it from the 1%, 2%, 3%, that when shit really hits the fan, you're in the best possible way to put this into practice. Don't wait for the big ones, because emotional resilience, like understanding your emotions, managing your emotions, isn't something that we are born with. We wouldn't know what to do with them. And I think that's why a lot of people around us struggles with that, because there's never been a good education. Contrary has been happening, like, we can't control our emotions, they happen to us, that mindset. But flip it on its head and recognize that emotional resilience is like any muscle that you build. So if I want stronger arms, I'm working on my shoulders actually. So if I want stronger shoulders, I know what kind of exercises to do. And it's not going to be one time I do it and I'm going to get great, strong, lovely shoulders. I have to keep doing it over a period of time. And then if I want to maintain it, I do keep doing it. So that's it. That's what I mean by the persistent and continuous effort.
Yeah, yeah. So finding things just during the day that you can
Yeah,
learn to challenge the way that you're feeling about, and actually just sometimes it's a bit like playing a game, isn't it? How can
yeah,
I sit in traffic but be calm? Or how
yeah,
can I go out to that restaurant and not feel like 8 out of 10 anxious? Maybe I'll just see if I can get it to a 6 out of 10 anxious. And it's like you're just playing with your own skill set, if you like. It's got
yeah,
nothing to do with the outside world,
yeah,
but this is just something you can do for yourself.
yeah, 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 exactly. And it just builds from that. It's it's the skill set that we build, and then we show ourselves that we are the architect here, and
Yeah.
that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, yeah, which is exactly how you went into that once you'd had that initial and then
Yeah,
thought, right, I am in this situation, there's no getting out, but I'm in charge of how I experience this. And that's when you started sort of thinking more in a powerful, what can I do way?
yeah,
How am I going to do this way?
yeah,
Fab, fab.
yeah,
Well, really interesting and inspiring and relatable for people to sort of take away how they can start to
yes,
build similar mastery over how they feel. So thank you
exactly.
so much.
No, thanks for having me. And with that in mind, should we leave it on a high note? I just want to round up the story. I'm very happy to say, my daughter, although she was born premature, but we did get incredible care, and she's now a thriving toddler, and I'm very proud of her.
Yeah. And here you are,
Yeah,
equally probably come out even stronger, even more believing in yourself and your
yeah,
abilities. So that's great, great for you
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Fab. Well, thank you. And
Thank
we'll
you.
have to have you on another time for
Yes,
another topic.
I would love that.